The Honourable Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Cabinet Ministers and members of the House. I rise to contribute to debate upon the Appropriation Bill of 2022 and 2023. At the outset, Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to thank the Honourable Minister for Economy and his staff, Permanent Secretary and the sector managers for the composition of this budget, as well as the Honourable Leader of the Opposition for his response to the same. As a loyal member of the Opposition, the representative of my people, I intend to highlight some issues that have been announced to this House on the 15th of July. In the last 1.5 decades of this Bani Maramba-led interim and then Fiji First government, our country has skyrocketing public debt burden, highest unemployment rate in the history of Fiji, unprecedented cost of living, worst healthcare and medical services, poor public infrastructure, poorest index on human development and democratic accountability, draconian labor laws, and no pay rise for civil servants, especially our nurses, our doctors, and of course our police officers. And they trample upon every traditional institution and structure in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are civil service workers who need urgent pay rise, whom I would like to reiterate, especially the Fiji Police Force, whose budget has been slashed, our teachers, our doctors. Crime, Mr. Speaker, sir, domestic violence, theft, law and order are much the work of police officers, and they need to be remunerated accordingly. We have a war on our hands caused by crime, and it's our police who are at the forefront in battling them on our behalf, and the budget being reduced does not augur well in terms of them carrying out their roles as custodians of the law. So this House will note, when such a warning bell was raised here of these impending dangers that come to us by the poor governance of this government, turned into a corporate-funded political party, they did not listen to us. Our visionary leaders and social workers of Fiji, the past members of this House, such as the late Honourable Laisine Garcia, Rapisho Tikola, Bolniko Nawaikula, Mr. Paramount Chan, Dr. Ganesh Chan, Felix Anthony, Mr. Semesa Karabaki, they warned us about the implications of the same. This government, they did not listen. As such, Mr. Speaker, I wish to urge this Parliament and the people of Fiji to realize the potent danger of affording to keep such a government in power for one more term. Enough is enough, but more than enough is not good enough. I only pray and wish that we have the wisdom here to vote this budget down, and due to the huge debt, both domestic and external, that now stand at 9.1 billion as of July 2022. I wish to register my heartfelt thanks and sincere appreciation to the following persons and organizations for coming to the rescue of our people: non-government organizations at home and abroad, donor agencies and assistance from foreign governments, Australia, New Zealand, the US, India, China, Japan, Taiwan, and many others. Local business houses and philanthropists, our Vanua and community-based organizations, our religious and cultural bodies, good-hearted Samaritans from Fiji and overseas, and of course, frontline workers and the volunteers with them. Mr. Speaker, sir, on USP, why else would a government want to withhold grants to original university, endangering the studies of our students who are learning there? I call on the Honourable Prime Minister and the Honourable Attorney General and Minister of Economy not to inflict more sufferings on this institution, especially when the actions are hurting our local and regional students. The support for tertiary studies students, regardless of whether or not they are TELS or TOPAS recipients, is commendable. But who will pay for this? Even the inflation mitigation measures to mitigate the effects of rising inflationary pressures, the payment of $180 per child under 18 years of age over a 6-month period will have to be paid back. And who, may I ask, pays for this? It will be the taxpayers of this country who will carry this burden. Not only that, Mr. Speaker, sir, it will only roll over to our children and grandchildren. This is but just to appease the young voters, enticing them to vote for them again. But let me caution the youth of Fiji today by quoting the former British Prime Minister, Sir Winston Churchill. The youth is easy to deceive because they believe in hope, unquote. I say, not now and not tomorrow. Noting that most of the successful and vote-catching policies and programs of this government were the ideas of opposition parties, adopted, modified, and renamed by them, and the youth of Fiji can expect a better package on education and youth development from us in government, including transition from loans, aid to an era of scholarship once again. Having given that broad outline and general remarks on the debate before the House, Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me now to confine my observations to the issues related to my portfolio of labour and industrial relations, while I have a mouthful to say also on the FNPF and social pension scheme. Mr. Speaker, sir, trade unions are not the enemies of the state. They are the friends of the state, the representatives of the workers, whose aim is to promote and protect ideals and principles of meaningful employment, better wages and working conditions, right to collective bargaining, right to strike, and freedom of expression. History is a testimony, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the advent of trade unionism in Fiji since 1904, and then given statutory recognition by struggles, the Fiji Industrial Workers Union, now Fiji Trades Union Congress, this has resulted into professional development, increased productivity, and better quality of life and standard of living, economic development, better social and public infrastructure, high index of democratic accountability, and robust institutions of governance and justice, as in the past. Trade unionism, Mr. Speaker, has been one of the bases of our past success stories, working in tandem with the previous governments amid our differences. The other fact that I want to point out, Mr. Speaker, to this government and for its own benefit, to grow up and learn to govern inclusively. The fact is otherwise. Every time there was a standoff between the government and the unions, the growth rate was low. And every time there was a pact to work in the spirit of collective bargaining, our growth rates were high, and we know why. That was because workers want to be appreciated, adequately paid, working with better conditions, have job security, safe work environments, recognized, valued, and the space to be heard, and grievance redress mechanism free of oppression and victimization. They are given training for further development, and they are promoted on merits, and our local companies to be the basis of this success story, retaining the cream of the national economy for the benefit of this nation. Mr. Speaker, sir, a good example of this is the sugar industry. The industry recorded highest sugar in production in 1986, and when industrial relation politics was at its peak in the sugar industry. And today, as the Brahmanama-led Fiji First government fulfilled its commitment to the ILO on labor reforms, has it given the green light to the Fiji Trades Union Congress to stage peaceful march across all towns and cities around Fiji, and have all rallies to speak out on workers' rights and aspirations, grudges and grievances, and demonstrate to the world that indeed democracy is alive and well on our shores. Otherwise, it remains as a dead horse, flogged by power, hungry politicians with an equally dead conscience, calling themselves the leaders of this nation. Sir, I'm thankful to veteran politician and trade unionist Mr. Krishna Dutt for putting a number of these issues in a broader context to his recently published book, The History of Fiji Teachers Union, which I recommend the government to read and learn about trade unionism and its relevance and future in Fiji. You may have curtailed the group rights, but you cannot stop individuals to associate and link up as groups and to put our tactics under the microscope. Mr. Speaker, sir, if only drama was life and propaganda was food, Fiji under Bainimarama-led Fiji government would be one of the most prosperous and richest countries of the world today. Yet, another of the latest antics was to showcase the more than 31 million accident compensation Commission of Fiji payouts since inception. However, another Honourable Minister of Economy, the Chief Executive Officer of the Commission, told the media how many applications were still pending and what were the stages of processing the same, and above all, the most serious concern out of this short experience with the work mode of the Commission, which was the time taken for the processing of applications in addition to the issues of backlog. Sir, the other thing this exorbitant 31 million compensation payout reveals is the either laxity by the workplace owners, facilitators with regard to occupational health and safety compliance, and the complacency on the part of the Ministry of Labour, Industrial Relations, OHS Compliance Unit, to inspect, to cost to update the compliance and regularly monitor and review OHS status at our workplaces. This calls for putting the work of the inspectors of this unit under the microscope. It's unfortunate the Honourable Minister for Labour is not here. The second last issue that I wish to highlight in my speech is the affairs of the Fiji National Provident Fund. The FNPF was created for superannuation purposes for its members, but the amendments made by this regime to the FNPF Act has deviated the fund away from its core founding values. We in the opposition, Mr. Speaker, have a number of reservations with regard to the abuse of the FNPF. Let me highlight some of the major ones. Firstly, amendments have resulted in the loss of veto power of the employee representatives to hold any transaction of the funds for the purposes other than the members' benefit. Today, Mr. Speaker, the members of the FNPF have to queue up, pay administration costs, and patiently wait for the loan and withdrawals or pensions to be paid out to them. And yet, here we have an uncaring government using its two votes on the FNPF board with the two votes of the employer representatives to outvote the two votes of the employee representatives and to use the workers' money in the fund as it wishes, in a nutshell, using it basically as a cash cow. Mr. Speaker, while investment of FNPF funds for membership benefits is not a bad idea, but let us examine the legacy of those investments by the FNPF. Were the members of the fund consulted to make the investments or lend out monies on government guarantees? Morally, was it a sound decision? Financially, was it a viable venture? And most important of all, what did the members of the fund receive in turn for the funds being used with no benefit for them at all? The fact of the matter, Mr. Speaker, is that this government is by a string of draconian legislation holding the FNPF to political ransom to fund for its political extravaganza and keep itself and its many yet to bankrupt public enterprises afloat, the latest being Fiji Airways and then now Airports Fiji Limited. Tourism with its enabler, the National Airline Link, was established pre-independence. Under the far-sightedness of our long-gone tourism and aviation experts, we have this industry as the main anchor of this budget. All the big talks and hyped rebranding and the desk financial. I asked the big question, Honourable Speaker, sir. Has our National Air Link achieved anything above than expected? Why are we so fixated on this industry? I call on the government to open up the sky and allow in all entrants that can safely bring in and ferry out peoples and cargoes at our international airports. This government has already surrendered our sovereignty at our international seaports of entries. Why are we not doing the same with Fiji Airways? One must seriously question our fixation on Fiji Airways. The new government, whose election is now certain, will have to amend the FNPF Act to restore the veto powers of the employee representatives on the FNPF board and institute an independent investigations on monies transacted by way of government guarantees for the purpose of loans, bonds, and other purposes, including investments made under this government to fact-find where is our FNPF fund. Is the cash cow still productive or is it exhausted itself? The last issue that I wish to speak upon, Mr. Speaker, sir, is the social pension scheme. While it's commendable that the social pension has been increased from 100 to 180 per month, this short-sighted relief and poorly planned policy of the government needs to be put under the microscope. By that, Mr. Speaker, the first thing that this House must take note of is the age of retirement, which is fixed at 55 years by this government. It is after 1 decade of struggle when a person reaches 65 years of age that he or she qualifies for the social pension. And what is the average life expectancy rate of a common person in Fiji? Now, let me quote from the statistics, Mr. Speaker, it is 67 years. That skins get to the bone on this stately lip service to our senior citizens. As if that is not enough, let me question the Honourable Minister of Economy on how many people of the age of 65 years are going to receive this $180 a month, and how many will have their applications pending due to the red tape bureaucracy it has been created in the process. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, this budget remains a joke at an exorbitant cost to the national purse. A more funny reaction by none but the Honourable Minister in his usual dramatic style was calling us, the opposition party's reaction to this budget, as nothing but grandstanding. Truth, Mr. Speaker, sir, has many ways of revealing and finding itself in public domain, and we do not expect much in the Minister's right of reply because many a time his passion for personal vilification overrides the importance of issues that we raise. This budget, Mr. Speaker, sir, lacks the strategies to give the shot in the arm for investment, economic development, revenue generation falls far short of the expectations of the people of Fiji on expenditure discipline, good governance, and above all, in addressing the pressing issues of controlling the price of basic food items. It falls far short in improving our healthcare and medical services and not taking an overall approach to our ailing and out-of-date public infrastructure. The budget continues to negate worker rights and encourage labor exploitation and exposes our women and children more vulnerable than ever to more pain and suffering. It is an insult to the resource owners, a curse on the farmers, and a trap for small traders. While Dracula guards the blood bank, the shark in the pool has been given the license to have a fishing holiday. I just remind Mr. Speaker, sir, if I have more time at my disposal to speak on youth and sports, but perhaps after the next election. Finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, when statistics speaks of the fact that you secular statistician instead of facing up to truth, when strategies fail and strategists run away, projections remain distant dreams, and signs of calamity are lingering at your face, just like the story of the one-time king reduced by his own antics to being a poor because what he now touches is not gold. Since the Honourable Minister and his government has failed to do that, the voters will show them the door at the next election due shortly. Let me remind the Honourable Minister for Education, Honourable Speaker, sir, that teachers are passionate about their work and they don't drink grog all night and sleep the next day. This is an insult to the hard-working teachers, and I ask the Honourable Minister to refrain from issuing divisive statement. Primary or secondary, teachers have the work cut out for them, and please don't throw them under the bus. Show a bit of sense and award them a pay rise, which is long overdue. It was clear enough last Friday night that the 51st government thinks this budget will be enough to get them through the next election. They're asking you to trust them. They're asking the voters to trust them. That somehow, and after all the waste and rots, can we imagine how arrogant and dismissive they will be if they're given another chance in office? We will let the people decide. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.